As you know, Halloween 2020 is on. As part of an ongoing effort to celebrate the secular Halloween and the sacred Samhain, I'm going to show you how to turn this into this. With just a few supplies that you have around the house, you can make this really cool item that looks like a beautiful Halloween decoration, but is actually a witch's oracle. Coming up next. Everybody, I am of course Mickie Mueller, author, illustrator, and witch, not necessarily in that order. Today I've got a really cool project for you that just screams Halloween, but it also relates to Samhain. So it's that perfect in-between thing for us witches. If this is the kind of thing that you love and you want to get more videos like this, the best way to do that is just to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you ring the notification bell, because then you'll always get an alert when I post a new video, so that you'll be among the first to be able to see what I've got for you, comment, and all that jazz. This witchy project comes from one of the 8 articles that I wrote for the 2017 Sabbats Almanac that's published by Llewellyn, in which I wrote all of the Crafty Crafts articles. So I have a craft for every Sabbat, and we're starting with Samhain because that's coming up. This project was for the Witch's Divination bottle. And there's one of the illustrations that was done for this article by the really talented Carolyn Vibert, who took my instructions and turned it into these great illustrations to really show what the project would look like when it was finished. So you guys probably all remember those magic 8-ball toys that we used to play with when we were kids, and you'd shake it up and ask a question and then tip it over, and a little die would come floating to the top with the answer on it. Now, what I'm going to say is, I used to love the magic 8-ball, and while it was kind of a funny little joke thing, I mean, we all take Ouija boards seriously, and that's just masonite and plastic too. And I actually used to have a magic 8-ball on my desk when I had an office job, and I would jokingly ask it questions about projects that we were working on. And you know what? The thing was eerily accurate. Well, here's the thing about that toy. That was not always an 8-ball. That magic 8-ball evolved from an oracle system that was invented in 1944 and was called the Psycho-Seer. And it was more of a cylindrical shaped item. So I read about that and I was like, hey, it would be really cool to make something like that yourself. It made sense to use a witch's bottle for this project instead. That's where the idea came in, to use a bottle like this. Now, I like these Frappuccino style bottles because the opening is big so that you can put your little die in there. But you don't have to use this kind of bottle. I got these bottles from my friend Tanya, and these are really cool, and it's almost a round shaped bottle, which would be cool to use. And if you don't have a bottle, you can use a jar. This little guy would be perfect. The opening is big enough to get your die in, and the bottom is fine for seeing. So it's a very flexible project. Don't feel like you have to use the bottle that I use. You're also going to need a cork. In the original instructions, I have you making a cube out of foam, but recently I discovered that a cork, especially one of these artificial corks, works great. I'm nervous about using a real cork because I don't know if it would become soggy with the water and it wouldn't float up. But I tested this. I put one of these in a bottle for a month, and it worked great. And even after a month, when I flipped that bottle over, it popped right up. I really recommend using one of these artificial corks. Also, in the original book, if anybody has that 2017 Llewellyn Sabbats Almanac, when you read it, you'll notice that I'm telling you to go ahead and see what you can find as far as Halloween scrapbook paper to use for this project to decorate your bottle with, or download some free scrapbook paper, or that you can find online. Well, I took it one step further for you guys this year, and I have created scrapbook paper that you guys can grab, and it's free. If you just go down to the description, you'll find a link where you can download a free copy of 2 different versions of that scrapbook paper. It's black and white, but if you want to add color with some waterproof markers or something, or colored pencils or whatever, you can do that. I would recommend doing that before you start on the project. Don't try to make the bottle and then color it afterward, because that will not work. But before you start on the actual project, you could color those pages if you wanted to, and then proceed on with the project. I also have a really cool label that is part of that download that you can put on your Witch's Oracle bottle. You can either hang it off from a piece of ribbon the way that I did, or if you want to, you can just decoupage it right to the front of the bottle. So you can really make this flexible in any way that you want to do it. I've also listed the ingredients that you'll need on that download, and I'll also put that list in the description for you too, so that you can see what you need to create this project before you get started. So without any further ado, let's get started on this project, and I'll walk you through it step by step. So if your lid isn't plain, you're going to want to paint it. I'm using quick dry nail polish. You could also use spray paint. This is just what I had around the house, and I was like, might as well. And there it is. Just set it off to the side, and if you use that quick dry nail polish, it'll be ready when you're done with the rest. Now this part is the foam. It's just that little thin foam, and we're going to create a gasket which is going to help to seal the bottle a little bit better to make sure that you don't get any leaks. You could also use packing foam, you could use cork, or you could even use the top part of an egg carton if you have that on hand. Next, I'm going to grab a cork and start cutting. You'll notice I have several there because nobody's perfect, and this first one I got super crooked. So I was like, let's try it again. So I was trying to be a little more careful on this one, and it still wasn't perfect, but it was good enough for me. Now I'm going to show you the cork in a minute that I used as my test one that I soaked for a month. Yeah, there you go. And you can see the word on one side works really well, and on the other side it kind of faded because it was not the cut edge. So make sure you cut the little end off of that cork, because then your words won't fade. That's what I found. So the next step, I'm just going to score the top of this cork, and kind of so that it will end up being a square. You'll see in a minute. I'm just trying to eyeball it. I mean, anybody who's like very mathematical, feel free to measure this and do the math, but I'm just not that girl. So again, this was just the best I could do. And there's what it looks like. So I know it's going to be relatively even anyway. And I'm just going to trim those little edges off. You want to use a sharp knife, because you're less likely to cut yourself with a sharper knife than a dull knife, because you don't have to push down as hard. I know it seems counterintuitive, but it's true. And there it is. And it still wasn't super even, so I decided to cut that little end off just to make it a little more of a square. And there is our die. Trim a little edge off. It was pretty good though. I was happy with that. So grab yourself a Sharpie. I wish I had one with a finer tip, but I couldn't find it. You know I have one. You've seen it in my other videos. But this one, I just kind of just try to be as careful as I could and get as small writing as I could on there. So you put a yes on one side and then flip it completely over and put yes on the other side. You want to do it like this so that your odds will be more similar, so that they're opposite. You got yes on one side, yes on the other, and then find any blank side, and you're going to put a no on one side. And then after you do that, you're going to flip it to the exact opposite side of that no to put no on the other side. So you've got two affirmatives, two negatives, and then you've got two more sides left, and those will be the undecided, which there is no room with that big Sharpie for me to write undecided. So I write maybe on one side. There you go. And the other side, I just decided to write try again, because I think that's one of the messages that used to come up for me for the Magic 8 Ball. And there it is. It turned out great. Now it's time for some witchcraft. Grab a tea ball if you have it. If you don't, you can put all of these things in any kind of fabric bag and bundle it up. Because basically what you're going to be doing is brewing some tea. In witchcraft, we also call this an infusion. So you don't have to use fresh herbs. A lot of what I had were fresh herbs, but you can use dry herbs right out of your cabinet in your kitchen if you want to. I have a whole list of herbs that you can use so that you can be more flexible and use what you have on hand. And those are listed in the description below. So you can take a look at those. And honestly, any other herbs that you like to use for psychic development, feel free to grab those as well. I tend to do it kind of quickly because I've been doing this for a while. But as I'm adding them, I try to focus on the quality, the properties of each herb as I put it into the tea ball. I'm thinking about these things and I'm basically communicating with the herb the properties that I want to bring out in this infusion that I'm going to make. You can do this in any way that you feel comfortable doing it. Just according to how you generally practice. If you want to spend a little time with those herbs, definitely do that. And then close up the tea ball. Now I've boiled some water and I'm going to add it to my mug. Make sure you do this in something that's heat proof. You don't want to put it in just a glass that might break from the heat. And you don't have to fill it up all the way. And then you just drop that in and allow it to brew. It'll make kind of a nice infusion and give it some time to cool before the next step. Now at the next step, you can grab a glass, and you've probably seen me do this before if you've been watching my videos. I love to use a coffee filter and just kind of shape it around the edge of that glass, give it a nice deep well so that you can use it to filter out. And I use any kind of clips. You can use little hair clips, or in this case I'm using clothespins just to secure that on there. Now I do this step because tea balls aren't perfect and sometimes little bits of grit and little pieces of herbs comes through the edges of the tea bag. And this way you end up with a nice clear liquid to work with. And I don't know if you can see, there is a couple little pieces of leaves in there from that mugwort. Now you just carefully remove those pins and move the whole mess out of your way. Now I do this next step in the sink because if you spill any, it's going to go into the sink instead of going all over your counter. Go ahead and pour your infusion into the bottle. I missed this part of this video. I don't know how I managed to do that, but I topped it off with vodka. You can also use any other kind of rubbing alcohol that you want. That helps to stabilize it and keeps it from going weird on you if you want to keep it over the years. Now I used a little black food coloring, 3 drops. You can use any color that you like, but I just thought I'd let you take a look at that. That's so satisfying. I love the way that looks. So drop your dye in, and then I topped it off with a little bit of water just to make sure that the water goes right to the rim of this, because you want to try to keep as many bubbles out as you can. You want the dye to be able to really lay flat. Then you grab your little gasket and push it into your lid, and then carefully put the lid on. Make sure it's not cross-threaded. Make sure you get it really tight because you don't want any of that food color and water to be leaking out of that. So just double check and make sure it works. Yes, it did work. Ha ha ha. And we kind of flip it a couple times. I like to flip it over and over a few times to make sure that I can get multiple answers, because if you're getting the only one answer every time, you might need to reshape your die. As you can see, I had a little help today. Grimalkin loves to be involved in every project I work on now. Now this is where your download comes in. And as you can see, there's a cover page, and then you have 2 different versions of the scrapbook paper. And you can use this for scrapbook paper too if you want to. There's Mod Podge. If you don't have that, you can just use some glue, some thin glue. And I decided to go with the black background and the white label so that it would really pop. I think it would really pop the opposite way too if you used the white paper and the black label. Or you can do them the same. It doesn't really matter. You get to decide because it's your project. But that was just what I decided to go with. So the first thing you want to do is just go ahead and cut out the label that you've decided upon. And now what we're going to do is start tearing this paper up. It's okay. You can tear the paper. It won't hurt anything because you have the file on your computer. You can print more if you want to. So, but I know it feels weird to tear it, but it's not. It's perfectly okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to want first to do the bottom and then the top, because you want those nice sharp edges to line the top and the bottom of your bottle. You'll see as I go along and it will all make sense. Now the ones for the top, you're going to want those to be long and narrow because the top of the bottle is long and narrow. It will help them to fit that curve if they're just more like strips and not big chunks, if that makes sense. I didn't want the little white strip along the edge of the paper anywhere except for the top and bottom of my bottle, so I decided to go ahead and tear those pieces off of the sides of the paper so that I'll have nice looking torn edges all around the middle of the bottle. And then I just tore that whole strip into thinner strips, as you can see. And that's going to be the top. I wanted those to be nice and thin so that they'll shape nicely around the top part of the bottle, that curve as it kind of flares out. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And don't worry about tearing the pictures in half because a lot of it's going to show. You'll be really surprised when you get to the end of it. I must have inspired Grim because she decided to tear something up too. She was going to town on my little floral display back there, but someone came and got her for me. So now I am going to start painting the Mod Podge onto the bottle, just in small sections, as you can see, and get that little, just that top part, and then you can start sticking these on. That Mod Podge will hold that onto the bottle, and then you just paint it right over the top. Grab a little, there you go, and you just paint it right over the top, kind of push it into place. And that will adhere that to the bottle and seal it. I'll show you a few of these as I go in real time, and then I'll speed it up to get us through it. But sometimes I think it just helps to see how it's done. There you go. And as you can see, I tore that paper, but like that cat, most of that cat is there. And you'll find that to be true on a lot of these. You'll get plenty of the images. And don't be afraid to get in there with your fingers and kind of smooth that paper down if you need to, because sometimes it just takes your fingers pushing it against the bottle to smooth it down. The other thing I will let you know is this. If you get some wrinkles in it, don't freak out, because a few wrinkles in that paper really just adds to the coolness of the bottle and makes it look super witchy and handmade. So there's no reason to freak out. It does not have to be perfect, because if it's imperfect, it's going to look even cooler. I basically just try to butt them all up against each other as I go, so that I'll end up with that whole top part covered. Then I'm going to flip the bottle over, which you'll see in a minute, and I'll do all of the bottom edge ones, and then I will go through and fill in all of the middle. That way I know my top edge and my bottom edge are nice and the Mod Podge dries pretty quickly, so it's actually really nice to work with. And if you find as you're working that you've got little gaps, you can just tear little pieces of paper that are smaller and kind of layer them over the top. You can somewhat take off other pieces and kind of reposition them if you want to. Like say if you want a skull to be next to a book, you can kind of do that. And here comes Grimalkin again. Boop! And back to the flowers she goes. Oh my gosh. So I decided to grab a little piece that I thought would look nice on the top of the lid, and I went ahead and added that to the top. And there's how it turned out. I'm really happy with it. Now to add the label, I just grabbed that, and I'm going to just use a hole puncher, but you could put it on any way you like. You can tape it on, you can actually decoupage it to the bottle itself if you want to. A lot of different ways to do it. I also added this fun little skull charm that I had, but you know what? You could add crystals if you wanted to for divination. I mean, the sky's the limit, right? Any kind of charms you want to add. And then I just tied it right onto the bottle to decorate it and just make it look extra awesome. We tend to be a lot more open to divination work during Halloween and Samhain, so it's the perfect time of the year to create this really neat little fun oracle bottle. And you don't have to just use it during this time of the year. You can use it anytime you want. If you have a little witchy shelf, you want to just keep it there, just like I did with my old magic 8-ball, and you can use it anytime. What do you think? Did it turn out good? Yes. And that's all there is to it, you guys. I think it turned out really neat. This is the second one that I've made. The first one I made, I actually created the year that I wrote that article, and it still exists, but it's in a box in my storage shed, so I haven't seen it since I moved last. But I really like this one better. I think it turned out really cool. I'm going to be very proud to put this on my shelf. And to anybody who comes into my home, they'll just think, oh, isn't that just an interesting little witchy bottle? It looks like something that you would get somewhere. But in fact, it's a custom-made oracle that you can use for Halloween and Samhain, for fun, or maybe for some serious questions that you have. You know what, guys? A lot of people are trying to not go out and do a lot of shopping, so a DIY thing like this at home is really great for this year. So feel free to share this with your witchy friends. They will be so grateful that you did, because it's a really fun project to do, and it's something that you can have year after year. If you love this project and you want to see more like this, make sure you give me a thumbs up. So that kind of helps me to know that you want to see more videos like this. Do they want to see more videos like this? Maybe. Well, you guys better let me know, because my witch's bottle is being a little cheeky right now. If you make your own and decide to post pictures of it online, make sure that you tag me at Mickie Mueller and use our hashtag Studio Coven so that everybody else can see your awesome project. I've got quite a few more videos coming up this month to help us celebrate the secular celebration of Halloween and the sacred Samhain. Until then, I hope that you guys stay safe, happy, and healthy. And remember, as always, to be your magic. Bye. And this is why we can't have nice things. Cats, right?